Hello and welcome to HomeTech. HomeTech is a podcast dedicated to discovering new and emerging technologies for the home. We discuss news about the Internet of Things, home automation, and more. I'm Seth Johnson in Florida, and I'm joined by Jason Griffin in Los Angeles. Hi everyone, welcome to HomeTech. Jason, how's it going?
It's going great, Seth. How are you?
Good. It's hot here in Florida. How's it over there in California?
Yeah, it's been real warm here too. Definitely a heat wave passing through, but it'll pass soon and we'll be back to our typical sunny 75-degree weather, so I can't complain.
Must be nice. Florida is not known for 75-degree weather except maybe in December sometime.
Yeah, it's definitely a perk. I won't deny that.
So we have a pretty good episode lined up today. We had a pretty good interview with Richard Gunther of the Home podcast, which is a really fun podcast to listen to because he's kind of a DIY pro is what I would call him. He kept calling himself a hobbyist, but man, he's got a really good podcast, and I think he's got just a substantial amount of knowledge when it comes to home automation and home control.
Yeah, no, I think you're during the conversation you used the word prosumer, and I think that's probably a more accurate term. The industry is, I guess I shouldn't say the industry, but home technology and the home automation landscape is kind of divided, I'd say, if you want to paint with broad strokes, into kind of three main categories. And you've got your pure do-it-yourself solutions, and then you've got the professionally installed solutions like you and I work with. And then in the middle there, you've got a pocket of hobbyists and people who just enjoy smart home technology and like putting it in their houses and tinkering. And Richard is very much one of them, really knows his stuff, knows what he's doing, kind of an Insteon power user, and comes at it from that angle of somebody who's very passionate about smart home technology, very passionate about home automation, really knows his stuff. He does a lot of great work over at the Digital Media Zone, and we'll include some links in the show notes, of course, at HomeTech.fm. But yeah, he's the host of a podcast called Home On that I think anyone who listens to our show and enjoys our show would definitely be well advised to go check out.
Oh, definitely. I listen to that show. I think he said it's every other week. So
yeah, it's a bi-weekly show. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whenever it comes out, I catch it and definitely listen to it. So yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, and a little plug. I'm actually excited. He invited me on his next show, so we'll be recording that here shortly. And I don't know exactly the date that's going to air, but for people who might be listening to this in the future, be sure to check that out. I will be featured on an episode, and we're going to talk about some of the differences between do-it-yourself home automation and kind of when and where you draw that line. Like, when do you hire a professional? Why do you hire a professional? What you can expect to get. So I anticipate that will be an interesting conversation, and hope people that are listening now can go check that out.
Hey, definitely. So there are a couple of real quick things to touch on the news this week. First, I think we've all been kind of waiting for Revolv to announce their Android app. It's been teased for a little while now, but they announced that it's in the Android Play Store, so should be good to go, and it looks pretty good. I've seen some screenshots of it. Looks good.
Yeah, great news for Revolv users. It's, I have to say, a little surprising to me that it kind of took this long. I mean, Revolv has been around for a while. Now, when I say a while, that's like in smart home technology terms, so it's not all that long. But, things move quick, and Android is not like a small portion of the smartphone user base out there, So I'm sure it's just a matter of these companies kind of have to pick and choose their battles, right? And kind of assign resources in places and move kind of productivity and resources around. So this was something that I guess just kind of got put on the back burner, but it is finally out. It's official. It looks good and definitely exciting for Revolv users who also have Android.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of clashes against well, not really clashes, but leads into the next one where Control 4 releases an app for the Fire phone, which is Amazon's recent cell phone, I guess, that they decided, smartphone, internet phone, that they decided to release, which is just another Android phone. So I really don't know why it's kind of this big of a deal, but they're making a big deal about it, so we thought we'd talk about it.
The story was everywhere in the trades and the blogs and various industry publications. It is Android, but it isn't, right? Like I think it's sort of a fork of Android, and it's something that Amazon kind of took and tweaked and sort of made their own. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, but I think that the Control 4 app has been on the the Amazon store for a long time now, like for the Kindle Fire. So I don't really know what this brings in addition. That other maybe it's just a different form factor or something. I honestly I don't know. It's kind of an odd story, but it's been all over the place. Like they pulled every string they could to get this out there. So
yeah, and who could blame them? I mean, they are the first one to do it, at least of the big players like Crestron and Savant. So yeah, I mean, who can fault them for trying to get some publicity out of it? I have no clue what kind of numbers are out there in terms of Fire Phone users. I know that I've yet to encounter anyone who has one, or any of my clients who have requested that one be added to their system. It's good to know, but I don't know that it's really. It's I guess what I'm getting at is it's a nice thing if you already have a Control 4 system and you get the Fire Phone. But I don't think that it's this huge differentiator where you should be choosing the system, the home automation system for your house based on the fact that they have an app for the Fire Phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. They sell a couple more Control 4 systems out of it. I guess it's a good thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean a couple, because there's probably only 3 of those phones out there. So another cool little story I ran across, it was on CE Pro, talking about the Weeby home automation system. It's going to be, looks like premiering at CEDIA, and they're promising true home control. So it kind of looks pretty cool. I thought we'd kind of just talk about it a little bit. So Weeby was a Indiegogo funded home automation system, and it got its funding, it looks like, and but what I really like about this is that it brings in kind of the, it's not just control, but it's automation. So just like your Nest thermostat learns your schedule and whatnot, this kind of extends that information out into other devices like lighting and of course HVAC and all that good stuff. So I thought it was pretty cool. It looks pretty cool. So I'd be pretty interested to see what happens at CEDIA, what it looks like and what they bring to the table. I just thought it was a pretty cool thing. So
yeah, and it kind of I don't know that they're the only one, but it's not all that common to hear about companies that kind of started on Indiegogo and are kind of a straight to consumer product going to CEDIA, right? Because CEDIA is all about the dealer installed technology. But this is a sign of the times, and there's going to be more and more of this going on at CEDIA, I think, over the years, because this is where the industry is ultimately headed, I believe. It looks like an interesting product. I have to admit, I haven't really dug in and kind of wrapped my brain around exactly, what it does that makes it different. But I can tell that they're definitely, kind of driving home that point that it's a learning home automation system. And we've talked about in the past that there's a difference between like home control or home automation. I should say there's a difference between home control and home automation, or the smart home, with the smart home being one that actually kind of learns your behaviors and adapts accordingly, versus home control, which is basically I push a button and this happens. And it looks like they are really trying to tout that learning aspect of it and the intelligence of it as a feature. So I know I will be at CEDIA this year, and I hope to find some time to stop by their booth and check it out and see what they're all about.
Yeah, it's interesting, like you said, that these types of systems are showing up at CEDIA. Revolv was there last year, had an extremely popular booth, kind of over in the back corner. But every time I walked by the thing, it was packed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Doorbot was there as well, which they make a doorbell intercom / video doorbell, I guess, for the lack of a better description, that you can put on, and it, has a camera, and somebody rings your doorbell, you can see who's at your front door. They were there too, but again, a direct to consumer type product with no real dealer channel, but they were there showing off the product too. So I'm really excited to see these products show up at CEDIA, so we can at least get some hands-on time with them and look to see how they would best integrate with our equipment too.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we're going to have to, as integrators, find ways to adapt and work with these technologies and not against them, because they're just going to be a rising tide. There's going to be more and more of them. And personally, I think it's great. I'm excited about all this new technology and where it's all going. But I know it does represent a threat to the kind of traditional ways of doing business. And I think it's our responsibility as integrators to educate ourselves. And so spend some time at CEDIA checking out some of these offerings, figuring out what they're good for, figuring out what they're not good for, and where you can still add value above and beyond what these platforms are capable of.
No doubt. And I mean, the price points are just going to bring. We talked with Richard a little bit about Insteon, and he was telling us about that $80 keypad dimmer that they have out now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me to do the same thing with Control 4 is a minimum $250.
Yeah.
So I mean,
exactly.
it's 80 or 250. I don't know. There's not too many customers that are going with the 250 option.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of Richard, what do you think? Should we jump into the interview?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go ahead and get it started. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. If you would please just swing by iTunes and drop a couple stars in the bucket if you'd like. And we're on Stitcher. We're supposed to mention that last week, but you can find us on Stitcher if that's how you get your podcast. Right. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very cool. So without further ado, we will jump into our interview here with Richard Gunther of the Digital Media Zone. We are happy to welcome to the show Richard Gunther. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, thank you, and we appreciate you taking the time to come on to Home Tech and join us for the show. For any of our listeners or anyone in our audience who may not be familiar with you or your work, why don't you just start off by giving us a little background, introduce yourself, and kind of what you currently have going on related to home technology.
Yeah, sure. So for the most part, I guess the first thing I should say is that home technology is my evening occupation. That my day job is in a digital agency where I work in the area of software development and user experience design. And I've been in that space, in the technical or software space, for about 25 years or so with a slant toward user experience. In my evening time and weekend time, I've been interested in consumer technology and home computer technology and home technology for years and years and years. I would consider myself a kind of a hobbyist who's been tinkering with stuff for a very long time. I was one of the kids that was down at my local Radio Shack teaching myself to program in BASIC. I was the kid who used my first year college book money to buy a CD player instead. I mean, it's really been an initial attraction to home and consumer technology. And I've played with home automation technology way back even in the 70s with X10. When that first came out, I remember as a kid setting some of that stuff up in my grandparents' house. And so, I personally became more involved in that when I bought a home about 15 years ago that actually had X10 stuff throughout the whole house, and I started playing with that and finding out its benefits and limits. But that's really what got me into home automation. And then, of course, I'm a blogger and a podcaster, also in my evening job at the Digital Media Zone. And I guess I would qualify us as a hobbyist blog that focuses primarily on tech that's interesting to home tech geeks and particularly people with a slant toward DIY home theater type of stuff. So about 2011, I started writing for them. I started co-hosting one of their shows that focuses primarily on Microsoft entertainment technologies. And then just last year, started a show called Home On, and it's intended to focus on DIY and enthusiast interests in home automation and home control. So it's been a really busy and crazy couple of years, and certainly this industry has changed like crazy, just even in the last year since I started the show. And very quickly, Home On is on a very fast path to overtake Entertainment 2.0 as our flagship show, which is kind of surprising.
Oh, cool. That's great. Yeah, I enjoy the Home On show, and I definitely would encourage anyone in our audience who hasn't checked that show out. If they enjoy home tech, I think they would definitely get a lot out of your show as well. We focus on a lot of similar topics, but again, you guys, you being a hobbyist and your kind of content is tailored in that direction, and that was one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on. Seth and I, as you know, work in the professionally installed dealer channel of home automation and home technology, and we live and breathe this stuff every day. And a lot of times, we are colored by our own perspectives, and there's this whole other segment of the market out there of people who just really enjoy this stuff as a hobby and like to take it home and just play around with it and tinker. And I think it's great. So we look forward to kind of diving in, learning about your setup, and particularly I want to focus on kind of your experience as a DIY enthusiast in the smart home space, and kind of how you see the industry developing. So with that said, maybe we can jump in and you can just give our audience some background about the actual technology that you're currently using in your home.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, my first home that I purchased had a whole bunch of X10 stuff in it, and I very quickly learned some of its limitations. And one of the big ones of anyone who's used X10 is lack of consistent reliability. And another big one is that the more devices you add to it, the worse it works. So if you have a big house, you're limited by a number of factors. You're limited by distance between devices. You're limited by how many things you can install until it just stops working reliably. So about 10 years ago, 9 to be more specific, Smart Labs, which was an offshoot or a division within smarthome.com, created a product known as Insteon, or a product line, based upon a custom power line carrier protocol. And they built it with the knowledge that they had, having worked with X10 in the past, and they had actually built a lot of their own X10 devices. So they took everything that they learned from what didn't work there and tried to come up with something better. Now, around the same time, Z-Wave was really coming out as well, and there were Z-Wave devices coming out. But because I already had experience with the stuff that Smart Home was doing, I figured, you know what, I'll give the Insteon stuff a try. And so, conveniently enough, I bought a new home and just started all over. And so I moved into the new home, and every time that I was replacing switches or controlling lights in the new home, I was outfitting it with Insteon instead of X10. And it was much, much more reliable and a much better user experience. So I've used a number of different software products to try and control things. And when I was working with Insteon in my old home, I used a product called HomeSeer, which is pretty well known in the enthusiast community. It is a very, very powerful and with many, many integration points, very powerful control software that controls Insteon, controls Z-Waves, controls AV products. I mean, you can tie it to everything. Control panels, you can tie it to security. And so I tried using that, and I used that for years. And surprisingly, it didn't change over years either. It was the same sort of product. And so I kind of tired of that a little bit. So I tried other products. I tried M Control, and I even built my own homegrown iPhone web app on top of HomeSeer at one point, which I ended up using more than the HomeSeer stuff itself. So one of the pieces of a smart home in the hobbyist community is oftentimes that you have a piece of software running on a computer somewhere. At least that's how it was until very recently, when all these hubs started coming out. And I would say you have to have a lot of patience with stuff like that. And it's not necessarily something that's going to get a good family acceptance rating.
No doubt. That's kind of the toughest part in my house is, look, I put this switch in, and if you double tap on it, it'll turn on the lights in this room. But if you triple tap, it's like my wife is just she's just over there rolling her eyes like, oh God. And I've got this one scene set up where you come in the house and you double tap the light that's right next to the door, and it kicks on all the lights in the house. And I think I'm the only one who uses that. I mean, it seems like such a really cool thing. You get your hands full, you walk in, you hit the button and twice, and it should kick everything on. And all I get is, why do you turn on the lights all in the house? So I completely understand that. So back to the control section of that. What does Insteon itself have? Something, I mean, I think they do. Like, they have a hub, right, that you could use. You don't have to use HomeSeer or anything like that, or is it?
No, that's true. So they have come out with software of their own that you can run. To be quite honest, it's never been terribly great. And until recently, when they came out with applications for Windows and Windows Phone, their applications have had a pretty terrible user experience. Again, tailored more heavily toward enthusiasts, not necessarily toward everyday users. And even their first forays into iPhone and devices like that were still very cumbersome. Really, again, seemed like they were developed by developers, not by people with a user experience background. And so that always kind of staved me off of going in that direction. Now, one of the nice things about Insteon is that you don't have to have a hub. And this is a little bit of a unique factor with Insteon. Any controller device can be compared to any responder device, and that can be a many-to-many relationship. So unlike Z-Wave or Zigbee or ClearConnect or any of these products that actually depend upon a hub, you can use any switch to control multiple things, and you can use keypads that you can install in a regular switch box that can control multiple things and scenes. And you can do all of that without a hub. It's when you want to start doing automation where you need things like timers or the ability to set scenes or events to occur based on triggers. That's when you really need some sort of either control software or something like the Insteon hub.
What I always say is, if you have to ask the question if the light is on or if this is happening, that's where you need that particular controller, so, right? So you can trigger all day long. You can press a button and have something change or something happen. But if you say press this button and if it's daytime, turn off the light. If it's nighttime, turn on the light. That type of thing, you would need that control processor for, right?
Absolutely. If you want any sort of logic like that or any sort of event that just happens automatically, for example, lights on at sundown or off at sunrise. Now, of course, you can use sensors for that too, and you can directly pair your sensors with devices. So, for example, I have a lot of closets where the builder thought it'd be a great idea to have for the switch for the light for that closet outside of the room. And so if you walk into the closet and you have failed to flip the switch, by the time you're in there in total darkness. And my laundry room is the same way. So that's a great thing where you can just take an Insteon motion sensor, put it in your room, pair it with an Insteon light switch, and it doesn't matter where the switch is. It just goes on automatically. You put on a reasonable time delay for it to go off. And again, a little bit of automation, no hub.
So
it's a nice
what
feature.
Does that motion sensor communicate by? Is it by power line carrier again, or is it another standard or another wireless component to this that I'm missing?
So really good point, right? At some point, you start realizing that you need devices that aren't going to be plugged into power. And I think motion sensors were probably one of the first things that Smart Labs built that fell into that category. And so they soon started creating an RF protocol that allowed them to bridge between devices. Now, just a little bit about how the Insteon technology works. It's actually pretty ingenious. The Insteon technology gets theoretically better as you add devices because it creates a mesh network. Now, lots of people are doing that now too, so it's not unique by any means. But it is a very robust way of ensuring that your communication of your message gets from one end of your network to the other. And so across both power line carrier and RF signals, the Insteon devices are able to communicate across a pretty large range within a home. The other thing that Insteon does that's pretty ingenious is that Insteon devices that are controllers don't say, switch A, turn on, switch B, turn on, switch C, turn on. They say, do this thing we talked about before. And everybody that's been paired with that controller, every switch that's been paired with that controller, that had that conversation about what this thing is that they're going to do, knows what they're supposed to do when that controller yells go. So instead of sending a whole bunch of messages out across the network, they send one message out that says do thing called A, and everybody knows what to do and if they need to do anything when the controller says A. So the communication is greatly simplified. And
yeah, I was going to say, and so the idea there is just to kind of streamline the communication if you're doing like complicated macros or, you know, executing multiple events based on one button press. I'm imagining that's going to kind of speed up the process and cause things to happen quicker than
exactly. And the thing that can happen, the thing that can also help facilitate is to make sure that when that signal goes out, everything happens at once instead of one thing happening, then another thing happening, then another thing happening.
Right. So we've talked about kind of the system architecture, and we've gotten into some specific examples of what's possible with Insteon. Obviously, just scratching the surface here, but I kind of want to back up from a higher level. As far as Insteon goes as a technology, like if I'm somebody, Richard, who's looking to buy a home, and I want to do DIY home automation, what are kind of like the pros and cons of Insteon? And maybe could you point out, like, are there one or two kind of top competitors? I mean, I know there's got to be more companies operating in that space. So maybe what are some of their competitors, and what kind of draws people to Insteon over some of those different systems?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's not an easy answer because Insteon is a number of things. It's a protocol, so in that respect, it's like Z-Wave, it's like Zigbee, it's like ClearConnect. In another respect, it's also a controller and a hub because they offer a controller and hub now. And so in that respect, it's kind of like something like Vera or something like the ISY 99. These are hobbyist-oriented type of products, but more now on the market, we're seeing things like Revolv and Staples Connect and SmartThings and Wink. Now, these are devices that are designed to span multiple protocols, multiple types of devices, but they all more or less do the same thing, where they act as the brains that controls stuff in your home. Now, what's the advantage of Insteon? I think there are a number of advantages. One of them is reliability. Another one, I think, is that Insteon devices have been designed in a way to fit nicely into your home. And there are inexpensive devices that you can get from Smart Labs or from the Microsoft Store or wherever you can buy stuff from Insteon that you can install, and it doesn't look like it came from a spaceship, or it doesn't look like it was designed in 1950 by Oster, or just some of the stuff that you see out there is just terrible.
Yeah.
And so they've taken a lot of care to design stuff that's just going to fit in your house the way it's designed. And it gets past that you're not putting that in my house problem that a lot of people have.
Sure.
And as an example, they have a keypad controller. And honestly, I think Insteon probably has one of the best keypad controllers you can buy, because for $80, you have 8 programmable keys that can be triggers and indicators, because they have little lights in each of the buttons that you can control for any number of scenes or any number of devices in your home. And it fits just into a regular Decora switch box.
Looks like they even have a keypad dimmer now.
Yeah, and so it can also control a load. So unlike stuff that you would buy for Z-Wave in the past that have the ability to control multiple things, this is also a load controller. I mean, it's an amazing device. It costs $80, and you can buy keypad front-facing plates for it that cost, I think, about $5 or $6 in any of the 6 standard colors that you would see switches in: brown, black, white, ivory. They've really thought through this, and you can get them custom etched for like $20 more. So for, say, something like $105, you have a completely custom keypad solution built right into your home.
Yeah, which is a great deal. I mean, that definitely, it might not sound like, if to the uninitiated, that might not sound like a great deal, but yeah, if you do a little bit of research, you'll realize very quickly that is a very good deal. So all around, I think Insteon is, it's a powerful platform. It's tried and true, right? Like, it's been around for a very long time. There's a large user base. I know there's got to be a ton of forums and communities out there where you can get help on your projects and if you run into questions and things like that. Can you speak to any sort of limitations or maybe frustrations that you have with Insteon? Like, are there things that you've tried to implement in your home that you've come to find out that Insteon just doesn't do, or maybe areas that you could see for improvement on the system?
Of course not. It's absolutely perfect, Jason.
That's what I figured you'd say.
Yeah, no, certainly there are things that I'd like to see it do better. And one of the biggest limitations right now is that really there's only one chip manufacturer. And so that also means that there's more or less just one manufacturer of devices right now. Now, that's not entirely true, because there are companies like SmartKnit and some others that have actually integrated Insteon chips into their devices. But for the most part, the only people making Insteon devices is the Insteon group at Smart Home. And that's definitely a limitation, because there's only so much they can do. And they've admittedly stated that they can't put out devices that people are interested in fast enough. They just can't get it through their pipeline fast enough. Now, they've done a pretty good job. There may be 30 to 40 devices out there, different types of devices you can get. But there are gaps. For example, a lot of the way that they handle certain types of automation is through very manually intensive installation devices like contact sensors and stuff like that. For example, to control a garage door or irrigation systems or blinds. There's nothing in their ecosystem right now to handle presence detection. There isn't really anything for energy monitoring. There's very little that they can do for AV control except through an IR blaster that interprets Insteon commands to IR, and that's not a great solution. So there's certainly a lot of room for expansion of their system to make it more of a complete whole home control and automation system.
Right. Yeah, I mean, IR control of AV components, though, is still, it's such a common thing. I mean, even with the professionally installed systems that we're still doing a lot of IR control. And, we hope that that's going to continue to kind of fade into the background and we can move on to, doing a little bit more sophisticated control of AV components. But I'm glad you brought that up, AV specifically. Seth and I have talked about it on a number of episodes in the past, that really with this whole new crop of like the DIY, really low-cost home automation hubs that are hitting the market, there's really no AV control implemented in any of these systems. And that's really still one of the big differentiators between, doing like a Control 4 or a Crestron system. And then, obviously Insteon kind of sits in the middle there a little bit, in that it can be done, but it sounds to me like, from what you're saying, that it's not like a great solution. I'm curious, are you using Insteon in your home to control like your TV when you sit down to watch TV at night, or not?
I am using my Harmony Ultimate to control my entertainment center, and it's relying on IR.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, they pretty much all do still.
IR has a long way to go. I mean, it works, and it's cheap. And you know what? The IP protocols that these manufacturers have come out with really don't work that well. Let's give one right off the bat, Sony and Samsung. When you turn off the TV, it turns off the Ethernet port. You can't turn it back on. So,
that's brilliant.
So that's why you haven't seen any control of IP control of those two brands. Now there are other companies like Sharp who actually leave the Ethernet port on, but they lose some kind of Energy Star rating, or they lose something off that. And I'm not sure what it is, but it has to do with the energy, and they have to shut off everything on the TV when it's turned off, and that's why they do it. But it doesn't make any sense. We want IP control on one hand, but IR is the most reliable. So I think we're stuck with IR for another couple of years.
I think so too.
I don't see that going away.
No, not anytime soon. Well, yeah, I kind of had one more, just kind of wanted to get one more thought of yours on Insteon, and then I want to zoom out even more and kind of talk about the broader home automation landscape in general. But if you had to look into your crystal ball and just kind of take a guess, kind of how do you see Insteon as a company and a platform developing kind of in the 3 to 5 year time window? I mean, there's just so many changes coming and so much increased competition from the lower end of the market. Do you see Insteon staying relevant, and how are they going to have to adapt in order to continue being a successful company?
So I do think that they stay very relevant, and they're trying to bridge into markets that they previously haven't had a lot of exposure in. As you mentioned, I'm a hobbyist, and that's where they've had their biggest take so far, is in the hobbyist market, people who are pursuing stuff like this on smarthome.com. That's not your average consumer. So they're trying to reach out to average consumers in stores like Best Buy and Costco, and they now have more of a boutique presence in the Microsoft store. I think they're even in Walmart, actually. They're really trying to get their name out there. But the retail space isn't ready for this yet. I mean, retailers are trying to get into this, but they don't know what to do with home control stuff yet. And, even as recently as the last 2 or 3 weeks, Home Depot has rolled out their Wink stuff that is from Quirky, and their rollout is inconsistent. Their people don't know about it. The display is uninspiring and confusing. And even today, I was at the local Staples store where they've rolled out the new Staples displays. The Staples Pilot for Staples Connect. A lot of people don't even think you could go to Staples and buy a hub, but you guys have talked about it on your show, and it's a pretty good system. It's an impressive ecosystem they've put together. And their pilot stores had an amazing merchandising experience where you had real products that you could experiment with and try and control, and boxes that you could look at and examine the product. And their new displays that they have in the stores now just look like every other hard drive rack that they have, with fake boxes of pictures of stuff that's under lockdown, and not even fake mock-ups of the products that they're trying to sell. So I think retail has a long way to go, and I think that's going to inhibit Insteon and other companies more than anything else in trying to get a bigger hold on this market right now. Now, how does Insteon in particular, what are they doing in the meantime? I think they are going to continue to put out new products. I think they're going to start working on more bridges to other products. I wouldn't at all be surprised if we see them with official Nest support soon. They have unofficial support right now. And I think we're going to see them partner with other companies to be able to support products that aren't a part of the ecosystem that they build with their own chips right now.
What do you, we've covered it a number of times, but what do you think about that Microsoft, the deal with Microsoft and having it on the Windows interface? To me, I'm kind of a fan of it. I have never used it, but it just looks like that tile interface lends to home automation so well. I know you're kind of a user experience person, so I'd like to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I'm a huge fan of Windows Phone. And if it weren't for the fact that my company gives me an iPhone to use, I would be carrying a Windows Phone. I love the product. And I even think that now that they're finally figuring out that Windows 8 tile stuff really only belonged on tablets, that is going to start making some headway too. And that kind of very, I don't even know how to call it, but like sectionalized view of the devices in your home where everything's represented iconically and you can quickly scroll between devices and see status and get live updates and everything. It's perfect for the Windows platforms. So I think that's a very smart move. You know, they've even introduced this, well, they've announced that they'll be introducing an integration with Cortana, which is the voice control that is rolling out to Windows phones now. That's kind of interesting too. I know, Jason, I think in the last episode you said that you're not really convinced that voice control makes a whole lot of sense, but I can see a day where I just walk into a room and say, lights turn on, and it knows what room I'm in. I don't have to take my phone out. There's something on me, be it a band or my phone in my pocket or whatever, that's listening and turning that into the appropriate control commands.
Yeah, I do think that there are edge cases and applications where voice control will be useful. I'm not totally sold on it as being sort of a primary control, but you know, maybe it's just my experience. I think the big thing with voice control is just that it still has a little ways to go, and I talked about this on the last episode, and that it's just the accuracy. The accuracy has to be so good. It has to be 100%, because even if it's 98%, users are going to only focus on the 2% of the time when they walk into the house and try to get the lights to turn on, and it doesn't, and then they got to go and push the button again. So I'm a little bit leery of voice control. You know, I think it is great. Seth has pointed out for people with disabilities, voice control I think is going to be huge. And maybe for simple things like walking into a room and turning on the lights. But I don't know. I guess time will tell. But I just have a hard time envisioning myself coming home and just having a conversation with my house. Turn the TV on, turn it to ESPN, that sort of thing.
Well, right. Yeah, exactly. And that is very strange, right? And I certainly experienced that with the Xbox One. That doesn't seem natural yet. And it partly doesn't seem natural because it's not reliable. And because it's not reliable, you have to enunciate everything perfectly for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
I think for me, it's one. It's kind of a step back, and see if I can try and. I've been forming this thought over the last couple of months. It's not automation; it's still control. We're changing how we physically interact with the system, but it's not automation. Voice control is replacing a keypad button with words, for the lack of a better phrase. And for me, it would be easier if the lights just came on when I walked into the room, right? And that would be home automation rather than home control. I think we'll probably want to talk about this more one day on a later show. But to me, it's just it's another way of controlling the same thing we've been doing before. So yeah. Oh,
I agree. And I think you need both, though. I think you need control and automation. You can't assume that automation is going to figure everything out on your behalf.
Right. Well, maybe. We go HAL 9000 in, Yeah.
If you get that working, you will be the most wealthy integrator in the land.
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
Very true. Very true. Well, yeah, so we talked about the Microsoft partnership. I think you make a great point as far as home automation in retail in general. I had a similar experience a couple of weeks ago, or whenever it was. The date is eluding me right now, but Staples, it was around the middle of this month, had announced that they would be, rolling out their Connect in a bunch more stores. And I was in a Staples grabbing some other stuff, and I asked the girl at the counter, like, "Hey, do you guys have the Staples Connect here?" And she just clearly had no idea what I was talking about. Like, just hadn't even ever heard that term before. Now, as it turns out, that particular store hadn't got the product. So,
right.
I got to assume that if they did, maybe I would have got a different reaction. But
Yeah, and I will say in that case, I think you'll find that you will. My experience in the stable stores has been that the stores that have it really have been educated well on it. And that is a big difference from what I'm seeing in other locations where I remember when Insteon devices were available in Best Buy, and I asked someone where they were, and they had no idea what I was talking about. Now it's Best Buy. I get that. But
they don't really know where. Yeah. You could ask them where TVs were, and they wouldn't be able to point you in the right direction.
Yeah, so I think there are general challenges, but I think invariably we are going to see more smart home technology move its way into retail as we get bigger players like Apple and Google and Microsoft involved. It's kind of a theoretical question. Do you feel like we're approaching a day where at some point somebody's going to be building a home or perhaps retrofitting an existing home with some technology, and we're going to have to sort of make an operating system choice, like the way we do now when we buy a computer? We kind of have to choose, Apple or Windows. Are we going to get to a point someday where users are going to have to say, okay, I have a HomeKit home, I'm an Apple home, or I'm a Google home? Do you see that taking shape?
I really hope not. I think that's how it looks like it may play out now, but I hope that's not what happens. I think there's an opportunity to get to a point where you do have to decide, what's your control hub going to be? You'll have to decide, am I going to buy the hub from this company or from that company? And whether it's something that's brought to us by Apple or something that's brought to us by Nest or something that's brought to us by AT&T, you're going to have some device in your home, an always-on device. Maybe it's part of your router. Maybe it's part of a DVR or streaming device, or even a thermostat, using those examples that I just gave as potential providers. But I think that is a decision you'll need to make. And at least in the very near future, maybe over the next 5 years, I think the hubs are getting us to the point that people are going to recognize the benefit of devices that weren't necessarily designed to work together interoperating. And I think that's going to be hard to back away from. So I'm hoping, I have no crystal ball, but I'm hoping that there's enough industry and consumer pressure to keep us going down that path, to try and get toward more cooperation as opposed to more splintering. And, you could argue, well, there are all these standards coming out. That's having the exact opposite effect, right? I mean, that's taking us back to standards wars. And what I don't want to end up with is a Sony forcing Blu-ray down our throats because it's more profitable, even though it's an inferior consumer experience. We need something that is going to work best for consumers. HomeKit may be a part of that. The beauty of HomeKit, as much as we know about it so far, is that it's a layer. It's not the whole solution. You don't necessarily have to buy into all of it, because if a device decides that it's going to be HomeKit compatible, it can be compatible with other stuff too. Just means that this can be integrated more easily with some of your other stuff in the same control interface.
So this leads us into the UI of the discussion, and I know a guy who's working on something.
Really? Who would that be?
Well, I think it's you, Richard. You may be working on a project called Homeboy Control, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. Seems like a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. So, I've been using home automation products for so long. As I've said, I think in general, the user experience is pretty challenging on a lot of the products that are out there. And it hasn't been until, I'd say, companies like Revolv and some others. Wink has a pretty decent user experience. SmartThings has a really good UI right now. Until then, I don't think companies have really prioritized user experience. And still, for the most part, certainly for hobbyists and people that are using stuff like HomeSeer, if you've ever tried to use HomeSeer, it's not something that you can put in front of your family. And so I got involved with two other guys that are working on some home control software called Homeboy. And Our belief is that the day-to-day experience has to be better, that there's no reason why it needs to be so convoluted. It can be simpler. You can get right to the point where you need to control stuff, and you should be able to do that on any device. You shouldn't have to be waiting for the Android app to come out a year after your product came out, that you should have access to it on your desktop, on your mobile web browser, on a Windows tablet, on a Windows phone, on an Android phone. You should be able to get to it anywhere. And so, in our spare time, because as I mentioned, I already have a night job. So my other night job is helping this team in defining the user experience for this product. And, you asked what I'm using to control my home. Right now, the automation component is Homeboy. I'm using our product currently in alpha, and we're expecting to go into a very limited beta shortly with the beginnings of scene and timer control for devices. And if you want to find out more about what we're doing, you can stop by the site there at homeboycontrol.com. Sorry, I had to get the little plug in there.
No, absolutely. No, and it's a great looking site, and it sounds like an interesting project. Now, currently, it sounds like you're building it. You're integrating this with your Insteon system. Is this a solution for Insteon users only, or is there plans to kind of expand that so that it can control a variety of different devices?
So today, the answer is that it is for Insteon users. And the primary reason for that is that we are Insteon users. So we built something that we knew that we could test as thoroughly as possible and that we could get some utility out of ourselves. And our roadmap certainly intends to incorporate other protocols and other third-party devices. The fact that Nest has a program to let anybody that they approve get certified to work with their devices, and other companies are starting to do that too. That's very appealing to us. So I don't expect that it will be just Insteon for a very long time.
Very cool. It looks like on the website it has available in Android market, coming soon to the App Store for iOS, and then Windows Phone as well. Do you think that this is something? Your product looks like it would fit right in with like a HomeKit solution. Is it? I don't know if you want to talk roadmap, but that looks like a wedge perfectly in there. For a great user experience, and then to have that as the back end, looks pretty good. That's
obviously interesting to us. Yes,
no doubt. So yeah, it looks pretty good. I like the screenshots you have on here.
Yeah, thanks. We're really trying to get something out to people that they can use wherever they are. One of the things that just drives me crazy is this great overblown assumption that the desktop is dead. The desktop is not dead. People still use desktop browsers on their tablets. People still use desktop computers quite a bit in their homes, in their office, when they're traveling with their laptops. So we wanted to make sure that we would be able to support everybody in whatever size or form factor of control device you happen to have with you.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that we're all three looking at one right now.
Exactly.
All right, Richard. Well, hey, we're kind of running out of time here, and just wanted to thank you again for taking the time to come on to Home Tech and join us. We really enjoyed the conversation. If there's anyone in our audience who would like to connect with you online, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I encourage them to stop by the Digital Media Zone if they're a hobbyist interested in home theater or DIY stuff. Digital Media Zone is a great site for that, and we have a number of podcasts there, including my own Home On show. We are an every other week podcast where we have a format with news and a guest each week, and I'm looking forward to having you guys on the show at some point.
Yeah. I will be joining you actually next week
in my next episode
to record the next episode. So I look forward to that conversation. Well, Richard, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate the conversation, and we'll let you go.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Richard. Take care.